What's good, YouTube? Sensational Sinceres here, and I'm back with another Tom Clancy's The Division Vendor Reset video. We're here for August 7th, 2020's Vendor Reset. So let's get right into this and see what we got good for this week. Okay, so for our first gear items, you want to head over to Camp Hudson. Here, the gear vendor has a prototype firearms mod with 263 firearms and 2,867 skill power. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the base operations. Here, the gear vendor has a prototype electronics mod with 261 electronics and 3,327 skill power. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the advanced weaponry vendor, and here we got a paratrooper SVD with a gear score of 264. It has 158% headshot damage, and the talents it has is vicious, adept, and discipline. Also here we got an infantry MG5 with a gear score of 271. It has 20% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is prepared, unforgiving, and determined. Also here we got an extended magazine with 119% magazine size, 4% crit hit damage, and 4.50% reload speed. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special equipment vendor, and here we got a double barrel shotgun with a gear score of 279. It has 337.50% stagger, and the talents this has is unforgiving, accurate, and responsive. Also here we got an M700 carbine with a gear score of 264. It has 158% headshot damage, and the talents this has is adept, toxic, and elevated. Also here we got a Spec Ops mask with the talent tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 282. The armor is 974. Its roll for firearms 1,247. And the attributes this has is all resistance and blind death resistance. Also here we got an operator vest with the talent rapid on there. It has a gear score of 274. The armor is 1,949. Its roll for electronics 1,201. And the attributes this has is enemy armor damage, all resistance, and increased kill XP. Also here we got operator pack with the talent specialized on there. It has a gear score of 269. The armor is 1,191. Its roll for electronics 1,234. And the attributes this has is stability and burn resistance. I mention this because I'm here. We got a prototype performance mod with 2.50% smart cover damage resilience. We also got a heavy magazine spring with 11.50% magazine size, 5% reload speed, and 11.10% rate of fire. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special blueprints vendor, and here we got a classic M60 blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a firearms mask blueprint with a gear score of 256. And we also got an angle grip red blueprint with a power level 34. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Cavern. Here the gear vendor has a tactical mask with the talent tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 272. The armor is 953. Its roll for firearms 1,186. And the attributes this has is crit hit chance and damage to elites. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 3.50% sticky bomb damage. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Camp Clinton. Here the special equipment vendor has a Liberator with a gear score of 265. It has 20% enemy armor damage, and the talents this has is prepared, competent, and swift. Also here we got a Pecan. If you're a fan for this weapon, it has a gear score of 274. It has 21% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is competent, adept, and Pecan. Also here we got a Cassidy with a gear score of 281. It has 341.50% stagger, and the talents this has is adept, predatory, and boomstick. Also here we got a prototype electronics mod with 255 electronics and 3,300 health. Also here we got a prototype performance mod with 5.50% first aid ally heal. For our next gear items, we're still at Camp Clinton. Head over to the special blueprints vendor, and here we got a snub nose rhino blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a first wave PF45 blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got some more firearm gloves blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got an electronic knee pads blueprint with a gear score of 256. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Dante's Run. Here the gear vendor has a prototype firearms mod with 252 firearms and 1% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Autumn's Hope. Here the gear vendor has a prototype stamina mod with 207 stamina and 4% damage to elites. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Ward. Here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 4% ballistic shield damage. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Grindhouse. Here the weapons vendor has a paratrooper SVD with a gear score of 264. It has 148% headshot damage, and the talents this has is competent, determined, and disciplined. And also here we got an extended magazine with 110.50% magazine size, 2.50% crit hit chance, and 4.50% reload speed. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 31st Street Checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype performance mod with 5% first aid self-heal. And then also here we got Loud Vent Break with 17% crit hit damage, 2.50% stability, and 4.50% optimal range. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 34th Street Checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has a classic RPK 74 with a gear score of 275. It has 21% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents it has is Predatory, Brutal, and Adept. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 39th Street Checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has an M249B with a gear score of 275. It has 19% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents it has is Destructive, Deadly, and Brutal. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 42nd Street Checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has a Gunslinger vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 268. The armor is 1,755. Its roll for electronics 1,217. And the attributes it has is exotic damage resilience, all resistance, and increased kill XP. And also here we have an extended magazine with 110% magazine size, 3% crit hit chance, and 4.80% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 46th Street Checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has a Spec Ops mask with the talent Tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 270. The armor is 895. Its roll for stamina 1,169. And the attributes it has is health on kill and burn resistance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 53rd Street Checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype performance mod with 2% post crit hit damage. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 64th Street Checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 6% first aid self-heal. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 61st Street Checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor has an extended magazine with 114% magazine size, 4% crit hit damage, and 5.20% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 58th Street Checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone gear vendor has a tactical mask with the talent refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 278. The armor is 953. Its roll for firearms 1,252. And the attributes it has is exotic damage resilience and increased kill XP. And also here we got a tactical pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 270. The armor is 1,281. Its roll for firearms 1,154. And the attributes it has is crit damage and bleed resistance. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to the Park Ave checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone weapons vendor has a covert SRS with a gear score of 271. It has 164% headshot damage, and the talents it has is Prepared, Brutal, and Predatory. And also here we got a military M60E4 with a gear score of 271. It has 20% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents it has is Dominant, Deadly, and Competent. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to East 42nd Street checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has an ACR with a gear score of 259. It has 18% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is Responsive, Fierce, and Swift. And also here we got a heavy magazine spring with 11.50% magazine size, 4.50% reload speed, and 10.60% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to East 40th Street checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype performance mod with 4.50% support station healing speed. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to East 34th Street checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has a Omega rifle suppressor with 18% headshot damage, 2.50% crit hit chance, and 4% crit hit damage. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to East 31st Street checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has an extended magazine with 112.50% magazine size, 4% crit hit damage, and 5% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to DZ2 Safe Room. Here, the Dark Zone gear vendor has a Spec Ops mask with the talent refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 271. The armor is 885. Its roll for electronics 1,236. And the attributes this has is skill power and disorienting resistance. Also here we got a Spec Ops armor with the talent Rapid on there. It has a gear score of 271. The armor is 1,764. Its roll for electronics 1,264. And the attributes this has is health, health on kill, and increased kill XP. Also here we got a tactical pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 267. The armor is 1,250. Its roll for electronics 1,120. And the attributes this has is health and bleed resistance. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to DZ3 Safe Room. Here, the Dark Zone weapons vendor has an MP7 with a gear score of 278. It has 21% crit hit chance. And the talents this has is Unforgiven, Deadly, and Self-Preserved. And also here we got a tactical SASG 12K with a gear score of 265. It has 313% stagger. And the talents this has is Vicious, Deadly, and Unforgiven. For our next gear items, you want to head over to DZ4 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone Gear mod vendor has a prototype stamina mod with 251 stamina and 2.50% exotic damage resilience. For our next gear items, you want to head over to DZ8 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone Gear vendor has a Gunslinger vest with the talent Vigorous on there. It has a gear score of 267. The armor is 1,771. Its roll for electronics 1,167. And the attributes this has is health on kill, skill haste, and increased kill XP. Also here we got an operator pack with the talent Specialized on there. It has a gear score of 275. The armor is 1,313. Its roll for firearms 1,229. And the attributes this has is health and bleed resistance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to DZ9 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone Weapon mod vendor has a Pearl Red Dot sight with 18% crit hit damage, 5% optimal range, and 3% crit hit chance. Alright everybody, that's it for our Tom Clancy's The Division vendor reset video for August 7th, 2020's vendor reset. I hope everybody who tuned in to this found something that they needed. Smash on the sub and like button if you hadn't. I appreciate that support, and I will see y'all with the next one. Take care, peace.